Okay, you Rolls-Royce and British car enthusiasts, this one on this particular day is having to work on his wife's '69 Mustang. Now this one's been in the family a long time. It was my mama's car. She got it in 1970, so it's all original, all matching numbers. It's got in-dash air conditioning, which is interesting, but I didn't see any good videos online of how to do these brakes, and obviously we worked on that one. But anyway, the reason we had to work on the brakes was there is a valve in here in front of the, I don't know if we're going to be able to see it or not, but it's right down in there. Okay, and it's got all the brake hoses running from the master cylinder, and that locked up. And what that created was basically locked front brakes. And my wife, being my wife, by the way, I knew this when I married her, she kept driving the car and drove it around the neighborhood, and I think she had it probably floored to get it to move. Got it back. The engine was quite hot. The transmission was hot. The front brake drums were so hot you couldn't even touch the hubcaps or it'd burn your fingers. Smoke and steam coming out of it, but you know, she only drove it a couple of miles that way. But they were brand new brakes, and you can see here, this is one of the brake pads, the result of that episode. So that's why I'm putting brakes on a newly restored '69 Mustang, but I didn't see a good video. I saw some of 70 Mach 1 and whatever, but this is original disc brakes on this, and I think you'll see them in some of the maybe 68s, a few, and 69s you saw them. I think it was an option, but anyway, we'll get started. Okay, I hope you can see that. Well, I've got my selfie stick back there, which the Rolls-Royce guys are probably pretty used to. By the way, what we're looking at here is I'm going to take this off, which is a spring that actually holds a brake pad in place. There's two screws, one here and here, and these are a brake centering deal. They go through a rubber grommet. These just hold this back plate on, and there's one on each side. And then this bottom bolt here, that holds the brake line on. And as you can see, I loosened it. I have a rubber pan under here I'm letting it drip in. But basically, I can go through now and take these out. Now that I've over-explained them. Okay, you take that out, and if you twist it to the side, it comes right out, I find. Some of them have a little lock on them. It's kind of, if you don't twist them to the side, you have a problem. There we go. You'll notice I've already loosened all of these, so they're coming out pretty easily. I don't think I can get that one out with my bare hands, so I'm going to have to use a little more leverage. I'm going to have to use a lot more leverage. Okay, got that one out. Got that one out. Okay. I'm going to take these top two out. These are a funny looking one too. They should not have a lock washer on them like that one has. And this is more pulling them out of the rubber than anything else. Now that shield isn't going to come off of there until I take this bottom bolt out. And this is the one that holds the brake line, as you can see. So, almost got it out. Yeah, there we go. And that's why I have a pan underneath there. And I'm going to let that leak into the pan. And then I'm going to take a rag and wipe the rest of it up that I spilled. In fact, I'm going to start right around all the rubber at the bottom. I don't want that brake fluid getting into my good stuff there, my good rubber. So anyway, that's how you take those parts off, and then I'm going to move the camera and tell you how you get that off of there. Okay, I'm on the other side now, and this is where it gets a little delicate because you got to get this off of here. So I take my hammer and I give it a little bit of a helping hand. Now this is actually a brass hammer. And I'm just kind of slowly, I think the back pad may be coming up with it. I'm not real sure. But come on, baby. There we go. And that's how you get that off of there. And we'll take the disc off next here, but I'm going to go clean my hands up a little bit. These hubs come out pretty easy. If you start around them, you can see with a screwdriver and just tap it up in there, they start to come out, and then after a while you can just take the screwdriver and work around them a little bit till they pop out. Now this tends to be the messy part, but anyway, I'm going to take this cotter pin out of here. This cotter pin is way too small. I don't know who put that in there. There's a retainer around here, which has to come off of there. And trying to get not all this old grease on my hands, but you can see that's the retainer. And then there's a 1 1/8 nut on there. And typically it's not on there real snug unless you have adjusted your bearings lately. But we're gonna take that nut off of there. A lot of threads on that thing. All right, got that off. Now I'm just going to shimmy that a little bit, and that'll allow me to get my washer and bearing off of there. And with that, I can just go ahead and remove the rest of that, like so. And that's how you take everything off for a brake job, all except the top brake line, and I'll get to that here in a few minutes. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is take this brake line loose. And I've got this wrench that is obviously, what do you call it, a 3/4 moon or so. But it goes around that, get it around that brake. There, we got her on there. Sometimes they're rather tight, but that'll keep you from stripping it. If you use a regular wrench, sometimes to break them loose, you run into that problem. So I use that double wrench until I get it loose. Now I'm going to use a regular wrench. The other thing we got to do is there's 2 1/2-inch bolts. One right there. And I'm going to loosen that and take it out. There's 2 on there. I'm going to leave the back one in. Okay. Okay, I went ahead and got that brake line all the way unscrewed off of there now. I didn't put you through all of the agony on the videotape of watching me crank that a little bit at a time. But this is the back bolt, as I said, I left in. And I didn't leave that in until I got the brake line unscrewed. Now I'm going to go ahead and take it out. You know, I took these brake lines, and when you take them both and loosen them, you get a lot of airflow in there, so the fluid all squirts out. And I let that sit there for a while, because overnight, just to let it all drip out, because otherwise it drips out here at the top, and you'll get it on your frame. And that brake fluid takes your frame and takes the paint off. Okay, so I got both of those where they're about finger tight. Okay, the part of the pre-prep on these hubs is you got to pack the bearings. And when I mean pack the bearings with grease, you got to pack them. Get you a big old glob of grease. Put it in the palm of your hand, and you start working that through those bearings. Like so. And you can push some of it back out with your thumb and keep going, but you'll see it starts coming out the other side, and when you start getting it pushed out the other side, that's when you know you got enough in there. So I'm going to go on around here, and you can see it's starting to come up there, but I'm not going to put you through the whole thing. I'm going to do both bearings like that. Okay, you can see I've got that packed real well. I guess that was a fast forward. And that's the big bearing, so it's going to go right in there. And I try to keep grease off the surface there. But there's a retainer on there, so we'll go ahead and get that on next. Okay. The next thing that happened, I mentioned the cap there, but that's the cap. And basically that just gets the cap down. I've got a aluminum hammer here, which works real nicely for hammering those down. It won't bend it too bad. That some people might use a brass hammer also. The aluminum hammer's a little softer. Okay, you can see I flipped this over. Try not to get this all over my hands, but it's probably going to happen anyway. But we get the other bearing in there. And I try to keep that grease on. Okay, what we got here, if you look right here, there is a burr there. And this brake pad rides in there, and this little lip right here rides in there, but it won't go in there because of that burr. Somebody's hit it with a hammer or something. So I'm going to take a file and I'm going to get rid of that. Okay, let's check that side. That side looks okay. You can see somebody's hit it with a hammer here and bent this edge down a little bit, but it doesn't go that far in, so it's not going to affect us there. So let's see. Oh yeah, that goes in there nicely now. Some people ask me what type of grease. I use this SIG 3000. It's a Worth product, and you got to deal directly with Worth. So if you go online, you'll be able to find them. But it's a synthetic grease, and it doesn't flow. It's got better heat properties, etc. I don't know that it's necessary, but there you go. By the way, these discs already had the bearings in them, so I don't know. I wanted a set of bearings, so I got an extra set of races there, but they sell you the hub with that on there. And so anyway, I'm pretty well ready to put that back on the car. The next thing we're going to do here is work on this cylinder. Get that out of the way. But on this cylinder, you got two pads. This pad will drop in the frame after you start putting this back on the car. But this pad has a couple of pins in it. So it's going to set in there like that. And when I say pins, they look like that. They got a little notch on them. And we're going to put this on there. And this goes up in there and then slides back into that clip. So when I took these off the car, there was two of them, one on each side, that was not put on correctly. In fact, we'll go over putting the other, this holds the other brake shoe on. One of these was off on one of the sides. So whoever had done the brake job didn't do a real good brake job on it. Okay, I'm here looking at this groove, and if you can see right in here, there's a burr. The edge of this brake pad right here goes in that slot, and it's not fitting right, so I'm going to back up here before I put those clips on there and get that. Take a file here. I've got a file, and I'm going to go ahead and file that little burr off. Okay, you got to put these little clips on. You can see, oops, that's out of the groove there. You can see there I put this clip on and got it. You got to run this down. But this style clip came with the caliper kit, but Napa sold me a kit with the back plate and all the little rubber pieces and stuff. But these clips have a bigger, you can see it's got a bigger snap on it. And this one is a bitch to get on. These Napa ones go on quite easy if you got a big belly. You can put the pin in there, and then I use just a punch to hold that pin in there, and I kind of put it against my belly because I'm going to push this thing on. There we go. Yeah, they're kind of a bitch to get on there. It's stuck in my belt buckle. But you can see they go down. And if you get them in enough, this little lip here should pop down. And it should be on the right on the metal. You see how that's riding on the metal of the pin there? If it's not down like that, it's probably going to snap off. So just a heads up, make sure you get that, because that holds it sideways. Okay, but you'll see that's on there nicely and all ready to go back on the car. Okay, here we go. Starting to put these brakes back on. I took some Windex and I cleaned all the brake dust and stuff off of there. That way you can kind of work without getting your hands all messy. This is the first thing I'm going to put in, these little rubber pieces, and you'll notice I use a little spit on them and lubricate the hole a little bit. I don't know if that's necessary, but it seems to make them go in a little easier. Come on, you baby. Okay, so that's how you put those in. Get the other one in here. Snap it on the outside. Okay, so got that in there. Now, the pads I can slip in after I play. Okay, that didn't fit in there very well, did it? So what I did is I got some emery cloth and I cleaned this off. This has been painted by the restorer that did this car, and I think he put a coat of epoxy primer, a couple of them, and then he painted it in some black modern paint. But there was enough layers on here, and when I took the pad out of here, the old pad, which he put a new pad in it when he started out, but it didn't last very long. But it was worn sideways. This end was almost gone and that end was all the way there. That's because this thing did not slip in there properly and get back in there. It fits snug, but it has to be able to work in and out. And the other thing I highly recommend is after you clean that out, get all the grit from your sandpaper out of there with some good lacquer thinner. And that'll clean those up nicely. Lacquer thinner will take paint off, so you want to be a little sparing with it, but you also don't want to leave the grit from your emery paper in there. So at this point, as I was saying before, I can slide on in there and it should be loose and able to move around. So that one does, and they're snug, but you can see it'll move, so it won't get locked where it's like that. So I think the next thing I'm going to do is get that rotor on there. And I, once again, on the rotor surface, they come and sometimes they have all kinds of oil and stuff on this surface. So once again, I take a little bit of lacquer thinner and clean that off. Now I'm going to try that. I got the bearing here. I'm going to try to stick that on there without getting too much of it on my hands. And it should go on there like that. I'm going to try to keep that off. You always get a chunk in the end there after you put all that grease in there. So anyway, we're ready to put our slotted washer, and then we're ready to put our nut. You know, on Fords, these are all regular threads. You got to be careful if you work on Rolls Royces, Plymouths, Dodges, Chryslers. They got reverse thread on the left side of the car. But you want to turn that a little bit as you let that seat in there. I'm going to have to get me a wrench to tighten that as we go, but got that on there. Okay, I got my wrench, and I'm going to spin this And I'm going to slowly tighten that down. I think I've got it pretty good right about there. You want it a little snug, but you want to be able to roll that pretty easily. Okay, you can see I stuck my cotter pin in there. And this little cap on here that's the retainer, it'll rotate until the pin fits in. Some of them, I guess I could pull that out of there, but yeah, this retaining cap's got clips, and this one went through the hole. If I turn it one more this way, they're closer together and it wouldn't go through. So you got to find the, I call it the sweet spot. And I'm going to put that in there. And you know, the Rolls Royce, I twist those, but in this, you've got a big hub, so I don't know that it matters. And some people nip off the one end, but make it real short. But I think you got plenty on this. And by the way, the one I took out of here was quite a small one. I like to use one that is made for the size of the hole. In other words, you go in there and you see if the next bigger size will fit. And I think I'm two bigger sizes than the one I took out. The cap I've got out to my plater, so I don't have it back to pop on there, but you want to knock around the edge of it. Sometimes I get a socket that'll fit around it, and if you bang on the end of it, sometimes it won't go all the way on because you bend it. The next thing I'm going to do, and by the way, I've got new hoses ordered, which I always forget something when I go to a hardware store, an automotive store, but Santini's down on Manchester Road. By the way, that goes on there right like that. I already had my one pad in there, remember? These had a lock washer on them when I took them off. Now the ones that come with the kit has a Loctite in them, which I think is what they're supposed to have. And you got to get that end started in the rubber. And I usually get the other one. Kind of, you know, and I'm going to move my camera to the back there so y'all can see that better. But yeah, getting those in the rubber, sometimes I spit on them, which helps. That's a good lubricant. So we'll move the camera back there so you can see it. Okay, hopefully we can see this in here. I have to cut some of this, but this may just be a test run, or it may end up pretty good here. Well, we'll see. Okay, so I got my shield, which I forgot to mention a while ago, but find where those rubber holes go in. There, that one started to go, see? We'll spit on this one. Boy, I hope this is a good take. Otherwise, this is just going to be verbal. Oh. What's going on with that shield. Oh, that one went right in. Okay, we gotta get a wrench. And I don't have one the right size, so we are gonna have to stop this, but basically you gotta tighten those two. Okay, we're gonna get a good picture of that and finish putting on the rest of this. The shield gets two 3/8 with a lock washer, and if you leave a little loose, you can move those around and get them in there, I find. And that one's started. Both of them started there. And now that I've got all of those started, I'm going to go ahead and cinch them all down. I'm missing this safety string on this, but that's all right. Okay, you put these in, I find, sideways. You rotate them up, and they go in pretty easy. But that holds that brake shoe down. And that also is a 3/8. Well, it said it was easy to get in there. I think we got it now. Oh no, that's a 7/16. Surprise, surprise. Luckily I got one of them laying right there because I wasn't real sure which it was. And one of those was off the brake pad when I took this apart, so that's kind of that idea. I don't think you're going to be able to see the top one, so I'm going to go ahead and put it on. But there is a top one of these also that you got to get on there straight. And anyway, that's the back. Now the hose here, I've got it hanging over my bucket, but it's got a couple of copper washers on it. And it gets screwed up on there, but these hoses are a little old, so I ordered some from my automotive place, Santini Automotive on Manchester. They're an old-time automotive supply house, and man, you order this stuff and it seems to all fit, and it's good quality, but I forgot the hoses, so I got to make another trip. All right, I think that's basically, except the hose and bleeding the brakes, I think we got this side about done. Okay, I promised you we would put on this cap. You can see people have beat on that a little bit. I don't like to beat on the outside of them for that reason. It's got this little piece in there, and some people say that's a static control for an AM radio, and I think it transfers heat better to the outside cup and radiates more heat out of the brake drum. But either way, I've got a socket here. It's a 1 11/16. And that baby just fits perfectly over the top of that cap there. And if I tap it a little bit with my brass hammer, Boy, that goes right on there. So anyway, I use a big socket, and that keeps you from whacking up the end of that. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull that blue dust cover out of there. At least I think I am. Well, that's in there pretty good. I'll have to get me a screwdriver or something. Okay, I got that plug out of there. Now there's a right and a left of these, and you get these brass sealing rings, so it goes in that way. And when I say a left and a right, that's on the hose. So I got a ring on both sides, and I'm going to get that started in there, hopefully. Like that, and then I'm going to go ahead and on the top I'm going to spin this around and put the two bolts in up here at the top, but I'm going to put them in loosely because I want to start the brake hose while everything is nice and loose fitting. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get the other one in. Okay, well I can still, if you can see that in there, well I can still move this around. I put my second bolt in there, but I'm able to get that brake line started on there. And I'm going to make sure that it's started on there. I'm going to put it in a few times. Make sure I haven't crossed any threads or anything. Okay, and then I'm going to put the last bolt in the side there. Okay, now I'll go ahead and get all those tightened down, and I'll have my line on. Oh, one thing I should mention is you tighten it down here. There's a little notch here that allows that to go on in, so it kind of, as you tighten this down, if you don't get that notch in there right, it won't tighten down right. So anyway, I'll go ahead and get them tightened up. Well, right now I've made sure that I've tightened that down, tightened that down. Those are both 1/2 inch into the frame. 7/16 socket to get the brake line on there. And this down there is a 9/16 right down here on the brake line. That's all tightened up and good. Okay, I'm here, and the last step of this brake job is bleeding the brakes. And I've got my hose connected down here, and I'm gonna loosen the bleed nipple, but I got that hose and that surgical hose on that, and I've got 2 ends or 2 holes poked there, so when I get done I can stick my other end in there. My buddy Jim came up with that. That really keeps you from getting stuff all over. This stuff takes off paint, so you got to be careful. Well, what I'm going to do is have my assistant, Dan, pump on the brakes.
All right.
And then he's going to tell me it's all right. Now, he's holding those brakes, and he's going to slowly let them go to the floor, and you'll watch fluid come through here. Okay, it's pushing fluid out. And I saw a couple of bubbles come out there. So we're going to do it again.
All right. Okay.
All right, now I'm going to loosen it, and you'll see. There we go. All right, I didn't see a lot of bubbles, but we're going to do it one more time. So Dan, let off and start pumping.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
That looked pretty good to me, so I'm going to tighten that off there. Run that juice down in that jar. And by the way, that is a glass jar because this stuff will eat up some plastics. Now I start out and I do the back left first because it's the farthest away from the cylinder. Then we do the other back, the back right. Then the next thing we do, since it's the farthest away from the system up here, the power system up there, we do the left side front, and then we do the right side front, and that completes bleeding the brakes. So this was the last wheel that we did here. So I hope we've got a nice firm pedal. Okay, now before you start bleeding the brakes, you got to take the cap off the reservoir here. And this is basically the cap. And as you pump it, the levels in this, I don't know if you can see it down there, but the levels in that will go down considerably. So you got to check them every once in a while or have your assistant help you check them. And the cap simply flips on there, and then there's a wire snap that holds it. Okay, I went ahead and put the lid on there, and I popped that wire back up on there, and so we're good to go. That completes the brake job.